Hey besties and bosses, happy Tuesday. How's everyone doing? How's your weekend? I know where everyone lives, obviously. We are global. If you let me know how the weather is, I'm in New York City and we had our first real snowstorm. It's been such a funny winter here. We had a really warm December, warm for us December, and then January has been cold. We've had some really, really cold days, but we haven't had a ton of snow. We had a dusting of snow. And this weekend, I feel like we finally got our first real snow, and I think we had about 2 feet. It was really, really pretty. So that is over here. It is finally feeling like a winter wonderland. A lot of it's melted off as it does, but that is how winter is here. Y'all tell me how you are doing, how your weekend was, what your weather is like. If you're getting a winter wonderland, I know some places got dumped on with even more snow than us, and if you like it or not. I personally love it. I lived in California and then Florida before that, so I grew up in such sunny places, having seasons in winter. I still feel I've been here 8 years, still fine. Very, very fun. Anyway, I know we are not here to talk about the weather, but I've become a typical New Yorker. I can't not talk about it because it's just so a part of living here. What we are going to talk about today is a self-coaching tool you can use to bring in consistent clients and cash in your business. So if you get the email from this, I was talking about the email and the kind of invitation for this conversation, we're going to be chatting particularly about consistency. I'm not going to tease this out. However, I know if you're here, you know consistency is powerful. I don't have to convince you of that. I think almost everyone has heard the power of consistency. We know the power of the compound effect. I have probably talked about it so many times in that I've been in business for 6 years in March, y'all. 6 years will be my 6 years. March will be my business birthday, I think, for 6 years. I think that's right on the math. I've built a multi-six-figure business based on consistency. I have shown up every day for almost 6 years with content, every week in this Facebook group with lives, every month with trainings, since we started the podcast, every week with podcasts, right? I can speak to, in my own business, how consistency has built first 6 figures and then multi-six figures and then adding on to that another 6 figures. And I see it in my clients as well, whether they're getting started in business or making their first 6 figures or scaling to $1 million. Consistency is so that ingredient. But I also think we all know this. And the challenge I find in the conversation I'm having so often with clients when we're talking about consistency and showing up consistently in business isn't understanding the concept of consistency. It's how do we actually get consistent? And what I find and what I want to break down today is talking about, I'm on a rolling chair, y'all. I'm like a funny person today. My chair is rolling into the camera. So let me just roll back here while we're talking because that's not going to serve our live stream very well. I think I need to lock this thing somehow. Anyway, now I'm a little further back from the screen. I was getting a little close. Anyway, one of the things I find with clients is it's not that we don't understand consistency as a thing, and it's also not that anyone is lazy or incapable. And one of the beef I have with this concept, and one of the things I wanted to bring here and talk about is no one has a consistency problem. That's not a thing. And if you're having a hard time showing up consistently, there's usually something else going on under the hood or something else we need to address. And I think what can be so challenging for business owners is we hear all about consistency, and then if you're having a hard time being consistent, then you start to label yourself as someone who has a consistency problem, and you start to attach your consistency problem to things like I'm lazy, or I just don't know how to be consistent, or maybe I'm not cut out for this business, or I can't do it, or insert, you tell me the story that might come up for you or come up for your clients. And then suddenly this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where you've decided to have a consistency problem, you're not showing up consistently, then that reinforces whatever story you have attached to not showing up consistently, when your consistency problem, I bet you, for most people, that's not really the thing. There's something else going on. And so not only are we not actually addressing and solving the right problem in your business and the reason you're not showing up consistently, we're also creating a new problem by adding fuel to this story that is really limiting and not serving, that is eroding your self-trust, or whoever's telling them the story, it's eroding self-trust. And then that is really damaging for business. And then suddenly there's all these things going on when consistency was never the issue. Now, consistency might be the presenting issue. I think a lot with when I'm coaching clients, and I think, if you're self-coaching, I said I'm going to share a self-coaching tool today. So we're going to talk through the concept of this. I'm going to share 2 things that could be going on if you're not showing up consistently, or if you're having consistency feels really challenging. And then I'm going to share a tool I use with clients, but a tool you can use to coach yourself through this as well. If you don't have support, it can be really helpful. Say hi, by the way, if you're here. Let me know how everyone, I should have asked this at the beginning, but I'm curious from everyone watching now and on the replay, let me know how you feel about consistency. Are you someone who's like, I got that down? Or are you someone who like, every time I hear that, it like makes my stomach like tie up in knots, or somewhere in between? If we had a 1 to 10 scale, give me a number on the scale in terms of how you feel with consistency. And I feel like we've been doing giveaways. I'm like making this up on the spot today, y'all, but I will give someone who comments today, we'll pick on Friday, I'll give someone access to Sell Out without feeling like a sellout. We no longer have that for free. It's a paid course now, 6-week sales course. I will gift someone a copy of that. Anyway, going back to consistency. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. We're gonna break the 2 things that could be going on so you have an easier time solving the right problem in your business, and we're going to go through that self-coaching tool. And I think what's really important here, and what I think is like really harmful if we're not addressing the right problem, is not only then are we solving things that don't make sense in business and leading something that maybe needs to be addressed, but what happens when we're not consistent and then we're creating the story that we're lazy or something like that. With the self-trust that's being eroded, is if you're eroding that with yourself, you're probably also eroding that with your audience. And so we can see then where the breakdown comes in play in terms of then that's going to affect your ability to book clients and to make money, and it's like a ripple out effect there. And I think what also then happens is we start to have this stop-start mentality in business, and we're linking that stop-start, whether it's showing up for your audience or showing up to your email list or showing up on Instagram, whatever the thing is, showing up in your sales process. When we start to have this stop-start mentality, we also then start to teach our audience that, but we're creating that narrative within ourselves. Hopefully this is making sense for everyone. So really want to help us see that you don't have a consistency problem. You are not lazy. Something I always tell clients is no one's lazy. Like really and truly, I think this is something actually to sit with this for a moment. No one is lazy. That's just not a thing. And I think it's really fascinating how we want to create that as a label. If someone is behaving lazy, they first of all are not lazy as a person. Notice how when we say I'm lazy, like that's such a self-identifier. We talk so much about identity in this group and the importance of your identity and how you see yourself. And your identity is also, it's who you teach yourself to be and how you show up in your business and the boundaries by what you set your business, but it's also how you teach others to interact with you and what to expect from you. And no one as a human is lazy, right? That is not a identity. Someone might behave in a lazy way, but even if someone is behaving lazy, and this is what we're going to get into more today, I think what's really important to start to understand is everything you do, everything someone else does, we are all doing things because on some level it serves us. In some way, this helps us meet a need, it helps us avoid pain, it helps us seek pleasure, it does something for us. We get some sort of gain from everything we do. So if someone is behaving lazy, no one is a lazy person, right? Let's stop using qualifiers like that for our identity. It's just so harmful to your self-identity, and I really want to invite everyone here to just notice when they're doing that and to cut that out. You can say I'm behaving lazy. Say I feel lazy, right? Like that's a little bit different there. What we need to start to notice is when you are not showing up for something that you say you want to do. When I think a really great example of this is, let's say something outside of business, right? If I'm not showing up for my run, first of all, I'm not a lazy human, but I might feel lazy. I might not want to show up for that. But if I don't show up for my run, we could say, don't show up for your content, don't show up for your live stream, right? The reason I'm not doing that is not because I'm a bad human or because I'm incapable of going for a run or because I'm like too lazy or because I'm stupid or because I'm dumb or because I'm not cut out to be a runner, right? All of the things we want to say in business when we're not being consistent. I'm not cut out to be a business owner. I can't do this. I'm stupid. I'm like just not a consistent person. It's not because of that. It's because something else is going on under the hood. And that's the thing we want to be able to identify, because until we can shift that piece, there's only so much muscling through your business or muscling to show up to go for a run you can do. At a certain point, your subconscious is always going to win and give you what you really and truly want. So for example, if I'm really exhausted, right? Like my body is going to fight and win that every time. If I have some narrative going on about how, running takes me away from my family, right? That, what I really want is to be with my family. That story, that narrative at a certain point, like that's always going to win out. And then it's just very convenient to not do the thing I say I want to do so I can get the thing I really want to get. And the same happens with business. And that is really what gets in the way of consistency. Tinley says, I had to work on this so much, but your words and work are magic. I love you so much. Thank you, Tinley. Nice to see you here, by the way. Makes my heart happy. Love you so much. So really, really want everyone to hear that. Let's stop with the labels and the harsh labels for ourselves. So before we go into the self-coaching piece and kind of like getting under the hood as to what might be causing you from showing up consistently, because we all know consistency is magic. We might not be lazy, we might not be stupid or dumb or all the things we want to say, but consistency is magic. Consistency will make you millions of dollars in your business. Your income, what does my coach say? Lacey Seitz, shout out to her. I think she says your income is as consistent as you are. So consistency is a beautiful goal. But let's break down first to some of the practical reasons we have a hard time showing up consistently, and then I'm going to share that self-coaching tool with you to break this down a little bit. So trying to think of where I want to start with this because I got a lot to say on this one, y'all. It's really interesting. Never thought I'd have this much to say on consistency, but I do. I think first and foremost, the first thing I would offer here before we get into some of like the deeper mindset component and what can be coming up, kind of what we were just talking about, are two pieces. I think one, first and foremost, checking in with what is your consistency schedule. What does consistency look like for you? We talked about this a little bit on the productivity live stream we did. I can link back to that. And this is something I talk about with clients a lot. I think what can really screw us up in the online space for as much information as at our fingertips, which is so beautiful, right? You and I can hang out live right now. We can like Google pretty much anything, but the kind of like blessing curse, right? Every positive thing has a shadow side. The shadow side to the online space and all of this information and everything being at our fingertips is we also really can see the behind the scenes of pretty much every business that is in our space. I mean, you can't see literally behind the scenes, but you can see my strategy. You can see what I'm doing. You can see how consistent I am because it's right here in your face. You can see how many times I posted today. And what happens is it's very easy, right? Comparisonitis, imposter syndrome, all the things that can come up. It's very easy to start to look, take your eyes off your paper, start to look and see what someone else is doing and to think, oh, well, Kim is posting 3 times a day in her Facebook group and going live once a week, and she does a masterclass once a month, and she's a podcast. Like that's what consistency looks like. She's telling me she has a multi-6-figure business, and she doesn't pay money on ads, spend money on ads, and blah blah blah. Like all of these things you're hearing, it's like that must be what consistency looks like. And so then suddenly we think that's what consistency must look like for us. But what you don't see, for example, in my case here, I'm just using me as an example because it's the easiest. What you don't see is I have a team. I've grown a team over time. I did not start out sharing as much content as I do now. I've been consistent every day, but I started with 1 post a day on Instagram, right? I didn't even start out going live. But you're not privy to that in this moment. All you can see is currently today without seeing what did that consistency look like at the start, what consistency got me fully booked, what consistency looks like now with a team, how my team has grown. Same if you're looking at someone else who maybe has a multi-million-dollar business, right? A really big team, and you're seeing them all over the place. It's very easy to start to think that's what consistency looks like. So therefore, for me to be consistent, I have to do exactly the same thing, especially if I want those same consistent results, right? I think that's a very easy thing for the brain to make those connections. I don't think it's even illogical. I see the result I want. I see the consistency that got that result, and I'm hearing consistency creates results. So therefore, this amount of consistency, which must be what I need to do to get this result, except for consistency looks different for everyone. You don't have the same business as, for using me, for example, you don't have the same business I do. You don't have the same audience I do. Like there's so many factors that go into play. And if we go back to rewind the tape, you're also not privy to, unless you've been following me from day one and really paying attention to what my consistency looked like then. And so one of the things I have my clients do that I would invite you, this is not the self-coaching tool. We will get to that. One of the things I have them do is get really clear on what consistency looks like for them. What is their consistency schedule that they are going to commit to and stick to, and really spend some time focusing that around their values and their schedule and their goals and their audience and what is actually possible. This is no different than if you wanted to get into shape and you were meeting with a physical trainer and you're going to the gym, they would help you pick a workout that fit your body type, that fit your schedule, that you actually wanted to show up for, right? You wouldn't just look at, I don't know, someone that you found on Instagram who has six-pack abs and be like, I need to do exactly the same thing as him or her, right? You'd want to find the workout that you actually want to show up for and that fits into your schedule. And for you, consistently working out might be 2 times a week. For someone else, it might be 6 times a week. And both are right, but we have to get clear on, I talk about your version of success, you also have your version of consistency. And if you don't get clear on your own consistency schedule, you start to measure yourself against someone else's schedule. And then it's very easy to make yourself wrong and to erode your own self-trust, right? If we'll use workout for an example, if I'm matching my running consistency schedule to someone who is a runner professionally and has a trainer and doesn't run a business, and I'm comparing their workout schedule and what consistency looks like for them to mine, I would say like, well, I'm not consistent and I suck and I shouldn't be a runner. Why should I even bother? And I'm lazy, right? You can see where that disconnect would be instead of what is the consistency schedule I'm committing to that makes sense for me and my goals. Mary says, love this. Thank you. And love you. So important here to get clear on this and to really understand that your consistency schedule will probably change over time. If I had kiddos at home, I have a stepson, but I don't have kiddos at home full time. But if I had kiddos at home, my consistency schedule would probably change. If we changed the business model next year, or if I scale down on team, my consistency schedule will probably change, right? And as my business changes, right now my consistency schedule is actually much more than it used to be because I have more team. And so I think just seeing this also isn't a stationary thing, which is why it's so important to get clear on what works for you. And then to see consistency also does not mean perfection, and it also does not mean every moment of every day. It means, what are you doing regularly? What are you committed to showing up more often than not, right? That you can commit to so that you can build trust with yourself first and foremost. You build trust with yourself first, everything else comes from there, right? So that you can build trust with yourself first and foremost so that you can then build trust with your audience and your clientele, right? And that's what creates consistent clients and cash. And so, and I'm just going to keep coming back to this and we'll go to the other piece. But I think even if we think about this with clients, I'm really consistent with my clients. We use Basecamp between calls. I respond consistently and check in consistently. That does not mean I'm in there every second of every day. I literally wouldn't be able to because I'm on client calls all day, right? And I love my clients, but I also have a life outside of business. But I'm very consistent with that. I think that's just such a great example of consistency can even look like, every day, and it's still not all of the time. And when I go on vacation, right, I still take time off from that. I can still do those things and still be consistent, right? Consistent is not every moment of every day. Mary says, thank you for showing for us and love you, showing up for us and love you too. You all make me so happy. I love getting to do this every week. So that's the first piece there. So I think just checking in with that consistency schedule and really getting clear with, even if you've done this, I would invite you to recheck it. It's a great time of year to recheck and see, did I make a consistency schedule based on my business needs, my current availability, my current capacity, my current values, right? Is this a little outdated? Have I not revisited it in a while? Is this what worked for me 2 years ago before I had a kid? Is this what worked for me when I was just starting out in business before I had a team, right? It might need to increase or decrease, or did I not even realize that I kind of have based my consistency schedule on what I saw so-and-so doing? And we're not making that wrong. This is very normal. Your brain is wired to compare. I don't even think that's a bad thing. I think it's great that we have access to be able to see so many things and insights into business. I think it's just great to always then get back to our own paper and filter that in to see what actually works for you. Now, the other piece on this side, before we go to the self-coaching tool, that I think is really important to check in with, because this is probably one of the biggest things I notice with my clients, is also starting to notice and pay attention to, where am I creating a consistency schedule that is actually a form of self-punishment? I think this must be a high achiever thing. And I think this can also come maybe when you're feeling maybe not as worthy, or there's some stuff coming up around feeling good enough, or like you're doing enough, Or I think, I mean, we talk a lot about trauma in this group as well. I think this can also be probably a trauma response, capital T or lowercase t trauma response. But one of the things I've really noticed when I see people creating their consistency schedule, especially if they've like felt like they haven't been consistent, it's like, well, I wasn't showing up consistently enough, or like I stopped and started a lot in my past, where there's like that guilt almost, where it's like, I don't feel like I've done things perfectly in my business, and so now I'm gonna get consistent. What I find happens is the pendulum almost swings, and it's like, so I'm going to punish myself with like a really, 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 really hard consistency schedule. It feels sort of similar to if you've ever known someone or experienced or been someone who's sort of like, I feel like I've started and stopped eating healthy or the way I wanted to, and now I'm really mad at myself, and I'm mad at myself for that. And so instead of finding a way to treat my body with love and find a workout or a way to move my body that feels really good, or a diet that feels really good for me, I'm gonna punish myself and only eat this many calories and work out every day of the week. And it's not coming from a place of self-love or enoughness or what actually like fits someone's body. It's coming from a place of punishment for either not loving their body or for like not having done perfectly in the past. And I think the same thing can happen with consistency. And so I just invite you to check in and notice if that's what's happening, because that's a recipe. What happens when we do that, you've seen this happen if you haven't experienced this. What happens when people do this with eating or working out, right? That is a recipe for someone to stop or to, I mean, we don't even want to go into the disorder place, but I mean, most people who try to diet really hard kind of crash diet and then burn, right? And then they just feel worse about themselves. We do the same thing in business all the time. I haven't been consistent with my content. Now I'm mad at myself. I am wrong. I am bad. Therefore, I punish myself, and I'm going to do 3 posts a day, every day, show up live 14 times for 30 days in a row. I'm being a little dramatic here, but I'm sure everyone here knows what I'm talking about. And so I think just checking in and seeing if that's the pattern. And if so, look at how can I be a little easier on myself, take some of the pressure off. If I was coming from a place of self-love, if I was coming from a place of trust in my business, if I was coming from a place of I've got all the time in the world, this isn't a race, I don't have to do it like everyone else, I don't have to do it perfectly, what would my consistency schedule look like? Same way we would talk to a best friend if they were being super mean to themselves about their body and the way they're then punishing themselves with eating or working out. I want to invite you to do the same thing when you're looking at your business and you're creating your consistency schedule. Really notice where you're punishing yourself or trying to punish yourself with the action plan you're setting up. Really, really important there, because that's not sustainable anyone. I think the other piece with that for it feels really important as well to say is not only is that not sustainable, at a certain point, kind of what we talked about earlier, your subconscious is going to revolt. There's nothing that feels good about punishment, right? And so at a certain point, your brain's been like, why would I do this? This is horrible. And subconsciously, you're going to want to not show up consistently. And then what that does is that reinforces the pattern, right? You create this punishing schedule. At a certain point, you revolt against it subconsciously. And then that just reinforces the story, see, I'm not someone who can show up consistently. Feel bad about yourself to then create another punishing schedule, right? We can see how this just becomes a pattern that repeats itself, as opposed to what works for me, what consistency schedule works for me. Okay. I'm on a soapbox a little bit today, y'all. So let me know if you have any questions about this, but check in with that. And we're talking about consistency today, but just check in overall. I think it's just a great place and a form of self-love just to check in with, where might I be punishing myself in my business? The other piece with consistency, and I promise we're getting to the self-coaching tool, that I think is helpful to check in with as well, is just noticing if you're setting up your consistency schedule as a way to avoid feeling a certain way. And what I mean by this is I find for clients as well, like it can kind of go one way or the other, but clients, for example, who have been burnt out in the past, or we talked about this, I think, a little bit on the productivity live, but who've been burnt out in the past, or maybe are leaving a job that really like worked them hard that they didn't like, they'll sometimes like want to set up a consistency schedule that's really not in alignment, and that's like almost like not showing up consistently at all, because it's almost like the pendulum swinging and that revolting piece in their brain. But that also doesn't feel good if you're setting something up that isn't in alignment. That's almost like you went from like working all the time to like, well, I'm just gonna do whatever I want and I don't have to be consistent and we're just gonna go with the flow and I'll just like post when I feel like it. That actually, I know that can like sound super loving and nice, but when we're that go with the flow, not only is that not building the consistency that we really need for the income and clients and cash and results in your business, but it's also not building that internal self-trust that I think is, it's almost like the most important part of consistency. Consistency will show up consistently, and I promise you'll make money in your business. And I think part of the reason for that is not just the showing up for your audience piece. It is when you start to make commitments and you show up for them when you say you will, you build that trust with yourself. You start to build that resolve and to see, I can trust myself to run this business. I can trust myself, I can trust myself, I can trust myself. And then of course you're building that same relationship with your audience, right? You're teaching them they can trust you to show up when you say you will, which teaches them they can trust you with their money if they invest in you and through you, right? It's kind of like self-trust and then audience trust, and then that becomes client trust. So there is a lot of trust with consistency. So when we let the pendulum swing and we're so like go with the flow, even though that seems like it's coming from a really self-loving place, I think just seeing there's actually quite a lot of self-love in creating consistency and setting up a schedule that you hold yourself accountable to because of what we're talking about here with the self-trust. Now, that doesn't have to be a crazy schedule, but I think having some clarity around that and putting some structure around that, again, can actually be a form of self-love that's really good for your business as well. So I think just noticing how we can like swing one way or the other, and then I think the other way, kind of what we were talking about, the punishing piece, and I think that can come from a lot of different places. Okay. So I have a note here. This is not we're going to go over to the tool here. But I made a big note here as a reminder for everyone. Don't forget, you can also invest in consistency when it comes to business. And that's not wrong, right? I invest in a lot of consistency through my team. And that's kind of what we were talking about. You can't always see, you might see someone showing up consistently, but you can't always see what's supporting them to be consistent. And that is very true, so you're not making yourself wrong, but also seeing that is also a tool you have as a business owner, especially as you grow and you create more income in your business and you have less time to be consistent. Don't forget, one of your assets then is you have more income to invest in support to allow you to be consistent. And I know that sounds like a no-brainer, but I think sometimes we forget that. Like, I pay for a lot of consistency. For as consistent as I am personally, like, I also pay for a lot of consistency. So just to normalize that, but also I think sometimes we almost forget that that's like a tool sitting in our tool belt. Okay, so let's talk about the self-coaching tool here for when you're not showing up consistent, because we've talked about a couple things we can think about with setting up that consistency schedule. And what Jen says, you taught me the importance of consistency during our intensive. I've been finally able to show up consistently. Makes my heart so happy. Thank you for sharing that. That makes me, I'm so proud of you. I'm celebrating you. That's a really, 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 really big deal too. I feel like that's such a big deal. So thank you for sharing that with me. So let's talk the self-coaching tool here a little bit, because what we talked about at the beginning of the live stream is no one's lazy. And when we're saying we have a consistency problem, we're really solving the wrong problem in business. And so if you're not showing up consistently, we really want to get clear on what is the problem to solve. And I say problem loosely, challenge to solve. What's the thing we want to address essentially? And so first we can check in with, do you have a consistency schedule that is aligned to you? Check that first. If you don't, that's probably the first thing to solve. You don't have a consistency issue. You probably don't have a consistency schedule. That's the first thing to create. That's an alignment to you. Second thing I think is always just really helpful to check in with before you get to this tool is, do I actually want to show up for what I have a consistency schedule for? Now, this sounds like a Captain Obvious thing, but you would be amazed at how many business owners, really successful business owners who are making a lot of money, but are having a hard time showing up consistently, get on the phone with me, and it turns out they don't want the business they have anymore. There's a part of their business that no longer feels aligned, if they've grown out of a part of their business, or they have actually built something they don't really like that much, or there's something else going on in terms of like, I just don't like this thing. And not liking something that's not in alignment, it feels important to say, that is different than I feel discomfort or fear because I'm doing something new, or I'm doing something scary, or I'm stretching outside my comfort zone, or I'm stretching my capacity. Two very different things, so just be mindful there, because your brain can be a sneaky, sneaky liar. So check in on those two sides there. But I think that can be a really, first and foremost is checking in with, is this something I actually want to do? So let's use the running as such an easy example. I love to run, but let's just say I wasn't showing up consistently for running. Do I have a consistency schedule that makes sense for me, right? Do I have my own consistency schedule? Have I made it in alignment with what actually works with my business and with my life and with my personal goals and values? Or am I saying I'm going to run 3 times a day, 7 days a week because that's what someone else who's a physical trainer is doing, right? Check in there first. 2, is this something I actually want to show up for? If I suddenly stopped running all the time, I'd have to check in with like, wait, maybe I don't actually even care about this as much. Like, is this even worth it? And not worth it like in terms of like, is it worth it? But like to me, is this something I even want to do? Maybe I want to switch up my workout. Maybe I just actually don't care about being in shape that much. That's okay. But let me be honest with myself. So that's the second piece. Just really want to invite you to check in with, because where you can think you have a consistency problem and you're just so bad at showing up consistently, it might be actually you have something that's out of alignment. And when it's in alignment, it's going to feel a lot easier to show up for. It's almost a whole nother podcast. It's been really interesting. I've had a couple conversations recently with clients where this has been a lot of the conversation, and seeing like, oh, it's actually that there's some pieces in the business that are out of alignment that we need to pivot, we need to adjust and shift, and that's making a big difference everywhere. So really invite you to check in and notice that, because again, this is kind of like the subconscious, like your subconscious brain's always going to win. Avoid pain, seek pleasure. You don't really want to do something at a certain point. You'll find reasons and ways not to be consistent so that you don't have to do that thing you don't want to do. Okay. And then this is the tool I want to share with you. So if we kind of go through those and you're like, no, this is actually kind of important to me. This is in alignment. And I've got a consistency schedule that makes sense, and you're still not showing up consistently. We talked about this a little bit in episode 52 on the podcast, 1 question to true accountability that leads to success in business. I will link to that. We talked a lot about true accountability, but I'm going to walk you through that tool a little bit more. And I have the hiccups. Hopefully that'll go away, and then I'm not hiccuping while I talk through this. And what I'll kind of give you like the brief version here and then the tool, but you can listen to the podcast for more details on that. What I think about with consistency and what I think about with true accountability is we want to find out what's under the hood and what's actually going on. It's what we were talking about at the beginning of this episode. No one's lazy, no one's stupid, no one can't do the things they want to do. It's that if we have the consistency schedule and this is something we say we want and we actually want it and we're not showing up for it, we're not being accountable to our word, there's something else at play. And our job is to find out what that is so we can address that instead of what do most of us do, like what we're talking about, like try to solve the consistency schedule or beat up on ourselves. And so really easy, this is, I don't know if it's like a self-accountability tool, a self-coaching tool that you can use with this, is to check in with, first and foremost, those 2 questions we talked about. Do I have a consistency schedule that works for me? Is this something I actually want to show up for? Do I want what's on the other side of consistency enough? Like, is that worth the trade-off is maybe a way to think about it. If so, what I'll ask clients and what you can just ask yourself and journal around is, what had me not show up for my content? What had me not show up for my live stream? What had me not show up for the thing I wanted to do? And see what answer you get. And I think what's really interesting, what I will say is if you know you have a consistency schedule that works for you and you know this is something that you actually want, we can kind of assume whatever your answer to that question is a lie from your brain. That's okay. We're not making you wrong. I'm not like, you're a liar. I think just know that probably, unless you're like super, 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 super introspective and you can like jump down a couple layers, your first answer is probably going to be your brain handing you a beautiful story, a beautiful excuse, like wrapped up in a bow. And it's going to say, here you go. Here's the reason you didn't show up. You can feel better now, right? I didn't go for my run because I just don't have time. Right? That's such a beautiful reason, and I can tell you why I don't have time all day long. So just know that's probably what will happen. And then what we want to do when we're coaching ourselves through this, or if you're working with your coach on this, or if you're working with a client, if you're journaling, you can ask yourself, what might that story be covering up? What might that, you can say excuse if you want to. It depends on how you like to talk to yourself. Some people get really triggered by that word. But what might this story be covering up? What might else be going? Like, what else might that be about? So I think that is when we start to get into the thing. So, okay, I'm not running because I'm way too busy. What might that story be covering up? Well, I don't know, maybe I'm like kind of scared that I'm gonna get super burned out if I go for a run and I'm not gonna have enough time to prep for my client calls. I'm like making something up here, right? But suddenly we can start to see like what's actually going on. This is where the gold starts to be when you're journaling. So check in with what had me not show up. What had me not show up for this? Get all that out, get all your stories out. And then check in with what might that story be covering up. And just let yourself go there for a little bit. And you might find a little resistance where you're like, it's not covering up anything. So if that's coming up for you and you're like, it's not covering up anything, this is really true, I really don't have time, Kim. I really can't show up for content, it's just too hard. What might that story be covering up? The other thing you can ask yourself here is, okay, well, if that's true, if you like really want to fight for that story, that's fine. We hear you, brain. I always like to talk to my brain as we hear you, brain. With clients, I'll be like, I hear you on that. And to you, I can say, I hear you on that. So how might this be benefiting you? How might this be serving you? That's what you can ask yourself. So how might this story, what are you getting from that? How might that be benefiting you? And when I say this, I don't mean this in a like literal, like, how's that serving you? As in like, it's not, but like literally and legitimately. And we do all of this with compassion and love, right? But what might you be getting from not showing up for the thing you're saying you want? What might the benefit of that be? So something in coaching we call a secondary gain. Not that everyone needs to understand like the nuances under this, but I think sometimes it's helpful to understand these pieces. And a secondary gain is just that it's that gain we get, it's that benefit we get from when we're doing something that on the surface seems like it's maladaptive or it's not serving us. We're always working in our best interest, right? Like everything we do it for our best interest. And so we're always doing something because on some level it meets a need or it helps us get a desire met. On some level, it might be subconscious. It's the Carolyn Elliott quote, you don't get what you say you want. Or you don't get what you say you want, you get what you actually want. I think we've talked about that in here quite a bit. It's sort of the same thing here. So often we get our needs met through other ways. And so sometimes when we're not showing up and being consistent, we are getting a secondary gain. We're getting such a benefit from that. Now, on the surface, this is why we have to ask these questions in a couple order. Like we want to first see like what are those stories and excuses? Because on the surface, there's no way consciously any of us think we're not being consistent. We're like, yes, I'm getting a gain from this. This is awesome. This is serving my business. I'm not showing up consistently. I'm breaking my self-trust. I'm breaking my trust with my audience. I'm not booking as many clients, right? We can see on the surface it doesn't serve us, but we can think about, but if I'm breaking that self-trust or the trust with my audience, if I'm not making as much money, if I'm not booking as many clients, if I'm not building my audience, what is that actually giving me? How is that serving me? And not from a mean place, from a like, let me be curious. We really get to see what are some of the blockers that are probably holding you back in business overall. You might find, oh, I'm actually terrified of booking a paying client. I'm so scared that if someone hires me, I won't be able to support them. Or I'm actually fully booked and at capacity, but I haven't been acknowledging it to myself. And I'm so scared that if I book more clients, that's gonna like break me. Or actually there's something going on personally in my life. And I'm so worried that if I start being consistent, that my health is gonna suffer because I'm not giving that enough attention. These are all very real examples from clients. So just to normalize for everyone, right? And then what happens is we don't want to say to ourselves these things. These are hard things to say. It's hard to say, I'm terrified of booking a paying client because I'm worried I won't be able to support them, or I'm worried I'm not good enough, or I'm worried about getting overbooked, or I'm worried about making too much money and that my friends will reject me, or my family will reject me, or I'm going to suddenly have to pay for everything, or I'm going to have so much responsibility on my shoulders, right? Those are, I think, challenging things for a lot of us to even be able to identify. But if that's happening subconsciously, and your brain is so smart, it's got your best interest at heart. And if your brain is like, oh, well, we don't want that to happen for you. Well, we know the easiest way to make that not happen. Don't show up for that live stream. Don't show up to put out that post. Don't show up for that client call. Get really, really tired and drag your feet and spend 4 weeks writing one post. Whatever the thing is, like usually there's something under the hood. And when we can see that, it's like, oh, it's not because you can't be consistent. It's not because you're not capable. It's not because you don't know the concept of consistency, or you're not able to follow through, or you can't trust yourself, or your audience can't trust you, or any of that garbage. That's not true, right? There's like none of you would be here and none of you would be committee to your business if you on some level didn't know you were capable and good at what you do, right? It's because there's something else going on, a normal human fear or story. There's something under the hood that feels really, really real that your brain is trying to protect you from, right? Making too much money because of the responsibility that it comes with, or booking that client that feels really scary, like all of these things. And then what's beautiful is when you can do this self-coaching, suddenly you see, and I don't want to call it like a problem, like you have a problem, but you can see the true thing to solve for, the true thing to address, the actual mindset work to do. So instead of like thinking, oh, I'm lazy and I need to punish myself and I need to get a new planner and a new system to like track my accountability and someone to check in with me or yell at me or whatever the thing is, because you've decided consistency is a problem, we can see like, you see this is why like workout regimens where someone just has you like follow a diet don't last very long, right? Or like I need to like work on my willpower more. You can see instead of trying to solve for that, like how that's not going to serve you, instead it's like, oh, well, maybe I need to create some safety around making more money, or oh, maybe I need to really work on building my self-trust up around my work, or maybe I need to see how can I build up my belief around my work, or oh, I'm at capacity, maybe I need to show consistently, but bring on some team or stop selling spots, right? You can see what's really going on there, and if you can address that, the consistency piece will take care of itself. It's going to become a whole lot easier to show up consistently, a whole lot more easier than buying like some crazy new scheduling planning system that you're going to stop showing up for 3 days later or 2 weeks later. So I hope that is helpful for you. I'm going to walk through that again. I'm just seeing here if I have any other notes for you on the tool. Oh, I did have one more note for you on this. I'll walk through the tool one more time in a second, but the other piece here, we kind of touched on this before. I think the other piece then to play with is after you kind of address what's under the hood, because I think that's almost like its own mindset work to do and own self-coaching to do. But I think what can be really helpful then, because usually whatever you address under the hood, it's like that's usually the like fear or the uncomfortable, like discomfort stuff. Where you're like, oh, well, like here's the thing I've been trying to avoid looking at. I think a couple of things to say. One, give yourself so much credit and so much self-compassion. Like first and foremost, self-compassion all the way for being willing to do this and to look at this. To know that when you shine the light on anything, that does so much to diffuse it and to have it lose its grip and power over you. I think sometimes we're so scared to look at things like this. And I think this is like why my coaching containers are great, because they're just so safe and I can hold someone in that. And so I'm saying this if you're doing this on your own, kind of as a journaling exercise. I think sometimes we're just so worried and scared of what we're going to see, because we think that that's going to like, what am I going to do with that? Or that's so bad. Or like, oh my gosh, this is this huge thing to see. And so like self-compassion, one. And two, just know shining a light on something, having that awareness, that is, if that's all you ever do, that is going to move you further in business, further in life than so many other things. Just having that awareness, you're going to be able to spot, like that's going to have you show up differently. That's going to support your consistency, because suddenly you're going to see, oh, I've got this story here. Like, I'm just so aware of it. I always use the example, anyone else gets scared if when I was growing up, I was scared in the dark. Well, two things. I was scared. I moved to Florida from England, and I was like 6, 7. And so I just knew there were a lot of alligators there. So I was convinced they just like roamed freely. And so I was always scared there was an alligator under my bed. And then when the lights were off, because my closet was open, the hangers there with the clothes, I was convinced, I was a very imaginative person, I was convinced they were monsters. And like, I rationally knew they kind of were, but like, what if they really were? Like, my brain was like, but maybe this time they could be. And so what did I do every night? We turned on the light to check under the bed and to see, nope, no alligator there, and to see, oh, that's a clothes hanger with some clothes hanging on it. And then I could turn the light off and go to sleep. This is kind of the same thing here. It feels so scary with the lights off to have to ask these questions sometimes, right? We're so scared that there's an alligator under our metaphorical business bed. Like, we're so scared that if we ask what had us not show up and what that might be covering up, that it's going to be like this horrible thing about us. And usually when we turn the lights on, we're like, oh, it's actually a suitcase that's under your bed. It's a clothes with some hangers. Maybe it's an outdated like shirt you need to get rid of. But so often when you turn the lights on, like, it's really not as bad as you think. Sometimes we actually laugh at it. I laugh with clients all the time. We're like, that's hysterical that that's the thing that was like keeping me from showing up. Like, that's not even something I really believe anymore. And then sometimes when it is something that's a little stickier, even if you don't do anything with it, even if you don't get support to move through it, even if you don't get support to shift it or rearrange it or delete it, whatever we want to say there, just having that awareness is, I don't know, 80-90% of the game. If you can have awareness, I promise you, you're so much further ahead. Mary says, love this. Oh no, that's from before. Thank you, Mary. Thank you for the heart emojis. It is like very nice when you're here, not feeling like you're talking to yourself. So thank you very much. I appreciate y'all so much. So I think just really remembering that and just giving yourself, like, if you do this kind of work, if you do true self-accountability, self-coaching, or with your coach, right? Like my clients, when they come to the call, like, just see, like, you're being so brave. You get to, like, really, like, I am a freaking CEO. I am amazing for being willing to do this, because most people, what they want to do is ignore this and go buy another program that's going to make them feel bad about themselves and tell them all the things they need to do differently, instead of let them go look at what's actually going on. So just, like, give yourself so much credit. Mary says it's also from now. I love this part of your live as well. Thank you very, 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 very much. Okay, I was like just trying to connect what you said. Oh, it's also from now. Thank you. I'm so glad this is connecting, because I geek out over this stuff because it's also very coach centric. So I'm happy to know this is resonating with everyone. The last piece here that we kind of talked about earlier, we had a question on the podcast about this as well. I'll have to figure, it was last year. I don't remember which episode. I'll have to figure out which episode and I could share it. But one of the things I like to play with, if I identify something that's like, oh, one of the reasons I'm not showing up is there is this like fear that has like arms and legs and a like horn and like warts, and it is like a hairy fear, and it feels like, oh, and this is what's like keeping me from wanting to be consistent. I think a really great question to ask yourself is, the thing you want to show up consistently for is what's on the other side of that consistency. The business, the income, the clients, the cash, the body you want, the health you want, the fill in the blank, is whatever is on the other side of that consistency. Is that worth it? Like, to you, is that something that is valuable enough to you that it's worth hanging out and sitting with that hairy, fiery monster until you get the thing you want? Because I think sometimes we kind of think like, almost like I have to choose one or the other, and I think sometimes it's like we have to look at, how can I just decide I want this thing enough that it's worth becoming friends with this little monster? Because it's probably going to kind of be there the whole time. And the more I can become friends with this monster and decide it's just worth it, the easier it is to show up. But if you're like, oh, that's actually not worth it, then you're like, well, good information. I probably don't want to show up for this enough that it's worth either becoming friends with this monster or doing the work to, turn the light on and clear it away. So I think that can be just a great check-in as well, just to see how worth it is. Is it to you, not from a place of like it needs to be worth it, but just from a place of really checking and kind of going back to that alignment piece. I was chatting about this with another client who's trying to think of how to describe this so I'm not divulging personal information, but she's thinking about letting go a big piece of her business that's not feeling in alignment anymore. And this is part of what we were talking through, is just looking through some of those pieces and kind of looking at it's really the trade-offs, but just knowing that there's probably like something that's really, really worth it, something that's really important to you, then you're probably going to feel some discomfort. You're probably going to have some hairy monsters under the bed. You just have to decide if what you want on the other side of hanging out with those hairy monsters, shining the light on them, showing up consistently, is kind of worth it. Otherwise, you don't like need to deal with those. So hopefully that's making sense. I'm trying to give an example without giving too much personal information. All right, I'm going to go back through the coaching tool. It's really, really simple for you, and then we'll wrap this up. So kind of the first two pieces there, checking in with, do I have a consistency schedule that works for me, or am I kind of borrowing from somewhere else? If not, start there first, right? We don't need to sometimes it's as simple as, I just don't have a schedule that is realistic for me, that makes sense for me. Maybe it's time to revisit that. So check in there first. 2, check in with the thing I'm showing up for consistently for, or not showing up consistently for, that I want to show up consistently for. Is this in alignment for me? And I think they're just seeing, you can check in from both sides. Is kind of what's on the other side of the consistency in alignment for you, but also is the way you're showing up in alignment for you. So we use the workout example. If I want to get in shape, and that's really important to me. I have a consistency schedule that fits me, but I got to check in with, maybe I don't like running, maybe I want to do yoga instead. So just check in there with, is the way you're showing up and then what that goal is, are those in alignment for you? If not, those first two pieces, like easy pieces to change. If it's like, yep, okay, still not showing up consistently, having a hard time here, what's going on? You're not lazy, you're not stupid, you don't have, you're not like not cut out for business, you don't need to buy a 14 like step planning system. Check in with and ask, what had me not show up for my live stream, for my content, for my client, for the thing, for the date I was gonna go in on, right? What had me not show up? And write your answer out, see what comes out of your mouth, and notice, is that true? Is that true? Is that really true? Am I lying to myself? Is that true? There's a good chance maybe I'm lying to myself. Is there something else going on? So then you're just going to ask, what might that be covering up? What might that be covering up? What might I be avoiding? Right, is another way to ask that. What might this be protecting me from is another way to ask that, right? So you can see what's the thing under the thing. And then if that's not necessarily helping you, you can also say, how does not showing up serve me? What do I get by not showing up? What's the kind of secret benefit there? If no one knew, like, and I was like being really honest, what's the like weird fringe benefit I get by not showing up for what I say I want, right? All of that is going to help give you that goal, that pot of gold, where it's like, oh, here's my truth. We're not going to judge it. We're not going to be like, oh, I can't believe that's there. This just means here's the truth. Here's the real thing we're going to work on. That's the mindset work. That's the piece to play with. That's the piece that if you can play with that, it's going to support your consistency. It's going to support all of your business. Okay. I hope that is helpful for everyone. If you're watching now and you have a question, throw it at me. If you're watching on the replay and you have a question, throw it at me. A reminder, I will pick someone on Friday to get a free copy of my sales course, my 6-week sales course, Sell Out Without Feeling Like a Sellout. So I will make sure we reach out to someone. All you have to do is leave a comment. I don't even know if I said that. Just leave a comment, say hi. Everyone who commented here already gets entered for that. I want to thank you all so much for being here. It means the world to me to get to have these conversations with you. I particularly loved getting to geek out on this stuff, so thank you for geeking out with me. And anyone who is looking for support, who wants true accountability, not someone to like check in and be like, did you do it? Did you do it? Because that's not how we roll over here, but someone who wants support creating a consistency schedule for them and getting clear on what's in alignment strategically in terms of how you're showing up, as well as the business model and the goals you have in business, and then supporting you with true accountability so you can be consistent, but like looking under the hood at what is your brain handing you? Why are you not showing up when you want to, or why are you punishing yourself in your business? If you want support with that, that is literally what I help my clients with. We are having conversations about this every day, all the time. I support them with both the clarity and the mindset, but also the strategy and action piece. I would love to support you. I'm really good at what I do. My clients get excellent results. We had 11 clients last year, hit 100K for the first time, $500,000 last year. We've got clients at the $1 million plus mark. So I can meet you wherever you're at. If you've never booked a client before, or if you're scaling to $1 million, don't feel like you can't reach out, because we talk about, client wins in the 6-figure plus mark. I have tons of clients who are starting business, and that is, I think, the hardest phase of business. Everyone's starting a business. You are a rock star. Do not kid yourself. That is literally the hardest phase of business, not to create a story, but just to give everyone a gold star. And I love working on both sides. So it would be my honor to support you. I will drop a link for a discovery call, and we can chat about one of my upcoming spots. I love you all so much. Thank you for being here, and I'll be back next week with another live stream for you.